She gave them everything: her talent, her time, her 20s, and the night they were supposed to say her name in front of everyone, they said someone else's instead. Daisy Esty stood in that ballroom in her best dress, holding a glass she would never finish, and understood in one devastating second that she had been building a future for a family that was always planning to give her away. So when Richard Parker called with his smooth voice and his careful words and told her there was a man, a billionaire, a Korean hotel magnate the whole industry whispered about, who needed a wife, she had one question: how much of herself did she have left to lose? Welcome to Afro-Seoul Stories, Soulmates. Please like, share, and subscribe. The morning starts with Joan. It always starts with Joan. Joan Abra has been the Parker family housekeeper for 19 years, and she is the kind of woman who notices everything and says only what needs to be said, which is why Daisy has loved her since she was 7 years old and newly arrived in a house that smelled like lemon polish and unfamiliarity. Joan is standing at the kitchen counter when Daisy comes downstairs, and without turning around, she reaches for the mug she has already prepared and holds it out behind her. Daisy takes it with both hands. Ginger tea, exactly right. You're glowing, Joan says, turning now to look at her properly. I'm nervous, Daisy says. Same thing on you. Joan tilts her head, studying her the way she always does, like Daisy is a book she has been reading for a long time and is finally reaching a good part. Eat something. You won't be able to swallow later. Daisy sits at the kitchen island and wraps both hands around the mug and lets herself feel the morning. The quiet hum of something good on the horizon. The particular warmth of a day that belongs to you before it has even started. She is 24 years old and she looks, this morning, like exactly what she is. Her curls are deep and full around her face, the dark coils soft and voluminous against skin that is the warm brown of autumn light. She is wearing the brown Oscar de la Renta-style mini dress with the small gold bow buttons running down the front, structured and precise, a dress that says I earned this without having to announce it. The cognac Christian Louboutin pumps. The tan Hermes Birkin she bought herself 2 years ago as a promise. The gold knot earrings that sit heavy and satisfying on her ears. Her Rolex catching the kitchen light. And her nails, the sheer mocha gel set she had done 3 days ago, the gold bow detail on the ring finger, tiny gold stars scattered across the others. She had stared at them for a full minute in the salon chair and felt something she did not have a name for. Like someone who has been running a very long race and can finally see the finish line. Joan is still looking at her. What? Daisy says. Nothing, Joan says. And then, your mother would have liked this day. Daisy is quiet for a moment. She looks down at her tea. Yeah, she says softly. She would have. Claudine Esty died when Daisy was 5 years old. Brain aneurysm on a Tuesday morning while Daisy was at school learning to count by fives. She was a Haitian-American woman who smelled like vanilla extract and laughed too loudly at her own jokes, and left a hole in the world that nothing has ever properly filled. After Claudine, there was the foster system, quiet and efficient and without ceremony, and then there were the Parkers. The Parkers were kind at first. Genuinely, warmly kind. Richard with his firm handshake and careful warmth, Patricia with her charity boards and her good intentions. They took Daisy in when she was 7, and they fed her and clothed her and sent her to good schools and called her theirs. And for a little while, in the way that children believe things because they need to, Daisy believed it. Then Patricia got pregnant. The miracle baby, everyone called it. After years of being told they couldn't have a biological child, Patricia fell pregnant at 41 with a little girl they named Simone, and the house reorganized itself around her the way houses reorganize around miracles. Nobody was cruel about it. Nobody announced anything. The warmth just slowly, quietly redirected, like sunlight moving across a room, gradual and natural and impossible to argue with, until Daisy was standing in the shadow of it wondering when exactly she had moved. She responded the only way she knew how. She worked. She was brilliant at it, the kind of brilliant that surprises even the person it belongs to. A mind for business that was sharp and specific and years ahead of where she was supposed to be. She poured herself into Richard's company the way she had once tried to pour herself into being a daughter, completely, without reservation, without asking what she would get back. Strategy. Relationships. The landmark hospitality development that had taken 3 years of her life and was, right now, the reason the entire company was celebrating tonight. She built it. She built all of it. And Richard had promised her, twice, in front of witnesses, in this very kitchen, that when the deal closed, the vice president title was hers. Tonight the deal was closing. I should go, Daisy says, finishing her tea. Joan walks her to the door. And there it is again, that look. The careful one. Joan, Daisy says. Stop. I didn't say anything. You have a face. Joan takes both of her hands, the way she does at important moments, and holds them. Whatever happens tonight, she says quietly. You know who you are. You know what you built. Daisy squeezes her hands and smiles. I'll be home by 11. Save me some of that stew. Joan watches her go. She does not smile back. The Parker Hospitality Group annual celebration is held at the Grand Seoul in Atlanta. All-bone white marble and floor-to-ceiling glass. The kind of hotel that makes you straighten your spine just walking through the doors. The room is full when Daisy arrives. Staff, investors, partners, people she has worked alongside for years. She moves through it easily, warmly, touching arms and accepting glasses and letting herself be happy about it, because she has earned the right to be happy about this. Marcus catches her near the bar. He is grinning the way he has been grinning all week. Tonight's the night, he says. Stop, she says, but she's smiling. Daisy, come on. Everyone knows. The whole company knows. You are the VP and Richard is going to say it in front of everyone and you deserve every second of it. She takes a glass of sparkling water and doesn't say anything. But she lets herself believe it. Just for tonight, she lets herself believe that the years of 2 a.m. sessions and skipped weekends and all the quiet, unacknowledged sacrifice are about to be made visible. That someone is going to stand at a podium and say her name and mean, this belongs to her. She built this. Richard takes the stage at 8:30. He is polished and warm and generous the way he always is in public. He talks about the year's achievements. He talks about the landmark deal. He talks about vision and leadership. He talks about the courage to build something that will last. Daisy sets her glass down on the table beside her. And so, Richard says, it is my great honor to announce the new vice president of the Parker Hospitality Group. My daughter, Simone Parker. The room applauds. Daisy does not move. Simone stands up from a table across the room, her hand over her mouth, genuinely startled, genuinely delighted. She is 22 and lovely in a pale pink dress, and she looks exactly like what she is, a young woman who has just been given a gift she did not know was coming. She has no idea. That is the part that takes the air out of the room for Daisy, not the betrayal itself, the innocence of it. Simone doesn't know what she is standing up to receive, has never known, not once in her 22 years, what Daisy's presence in that house has cost. Daisy picks up her bag from the back of her chair. She does not cry, does not make a sound. She stands up quietly and walks through the applauding room and across the marble lobby of the Grand Seoul and out through the glass doors into the warm Atlanta night. Her cognac heels click on the pavement. She keeps walking until the sound of the celebration disappears entirely. At the service entrance at the back of the room, Joan, who had come in the way she always finds a way to come to the things that matter, watches the door close behind Daisy. Her eyes fill. She does not applaud. Daisy does not fall apart in the street. She has been holding herself together since she was 5, and she is very good at it. She walks. She breathes. She goes back to the hotel she booked for herself for tonight. A beautiful room on the 14th floor of a midtown property, her own card, her own reservation, because she has always been careful with money in the specific way of someone who knew from very young that one day she would need to land on it. She goes up to the room and sits on the edge of the bed in the dark. Doesn't turn the lights on. Just sits. After a while she takes her heels off. After a while longer she lies back on the bed and stares at the ceiling and does not feel very much at all, which is in some ways worse than feeling everything. She gets up, changes out of the brown dress and into the light wash flare jeans with the bow detail at the hem, a simple cream top, the Chanel black sandals with the pink satin bows, because she cannot stay in this room, and she needs air, and she needs somewhere that doesn't belong to anyone she knows. She ends up at Piedmont Park. It is late, and the park has that particular city quiet that isn't silence, but feels like it. She finds a bench near the lake and sits down and watches the water, and after a little while she starts talking to her mother. Out loud this time. Softly, under her breath. She tells Claudine about the dress. About Marcus grinning all week. About standing there with her glass in her hand waiting for her name, and hearing someone else's instead. I don't understand, she says, to the water, to Claudine, to whoever is listening in the dark. I did everything they asked. I gave them everything I had. Her voice is steady, but only just. Why was I never enough? What did I do wrong? She doesn't expect an answer. She never does. She just needed to say it outside of her chest. Kim Ha-jin is 27 years old and has been in Atlanta for 2 days finalizing a property acquisition, and he is in the middle of an argument with his head of security Jong-soo about whether he needs a full detail for a walk through Piedmont Park at 11 o'clock at night when he sees her. She is on a bench near the lake, very still, speaking quietly to no one, or not to no one, to something. There is a quality to the way she speaks that stops him on the path. The particular intimacy of someone talking to a person who is no longer there. Ha-jin has built a hotel empire across 7 countries by the age of 27. He has been called cold and precise and untouchable, and all of those things are true in the way that descriptions of the outside of a building are true. He does not stop for strangers. He has never stopped for strangers. He stops. She is beautiful in the way that has nothing to do with effort. Deep brown skin catching the low light off the water, full natural hair, a posture that is simultaneously exhausted and entirely dignified. She doesn't look like a woman who has fallen apart. She looks like a woman holding herself very precisely together, which is, Ha-jin thinks, a much more devastating thing to witness. He walks to the bench, sits at the far end without asking. She stops speaking and looks at him. Not afraid, just tired. I'm not going to bother you, he says quietly. I just didn't want to leave you alone out here. She looks at him for a long moment with dark, clear eyes that are assessing him in the direct way of someone too exhausted for social performance. Then she looks back at the water. Okay, she says. They sit in silence. The lake is still. Somewhere distant a car horn fades. Who were you talking to? He asks, eventually. My mother. Is she far? Yes, Daisy says. Very far. He doesn't press. He just stays, and something about the not pressing, the willingness to simply be present without asking anything of it, makes her say the next thing. She died when I was 5, Daisy says. I talk to her when things get too heavy to carry by myself. And tonight things are too heavy. Tonight things are very heavy. He nods once. Neither of them says anything else for a long time, and the silence between them is the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Daisy does not mean to fall asleep, but she has been running on suppressed grief and controlled fury for years, and the night is warm, and the bench is still, and the man at the other end of it is the first person all evening who has simply let her be. Her head tips back against the bench. Her breathing slows. She is asleep within minutes. Ha-jin sits with her for another 40 minutes. He watches the lake. When Jong-soo appears on the path behind him with carefully managed alarm, Ha-jin stands quietly and speaks to him in a low voice. He arranges a car, private, discreet. He gives the driver the hotel address. He has Jong-soo trace from the key card in her bag, visible in the outside pocket. He waits until the car is confirmed, until he is certain she will get back safely. He does not leave a note, does not leave a card. He just makes sure she is safe and then walks back through the park, and he thinks about the way she said very far in a voice that was the quietest kind of brave, and he does not stop thinking about it for a long time. Jong-soo gets him her full name the next morning. SD Daisy, 24, Atlanta-based. Ha-jin sits with it, does not act on it, does not forget it, not even close. 2 weeks later, Richard Parker calls Daisy. She is in her apartment, her own place in Midtown, clean and modern and paid for entirely by herself, the proof of her own life, sitting in the cream-colored, oversized button-down layered over a brown strapless corset, the straight-leg brown wide-leg trousers and nude Louboutins she had put on with the vague intention of taking herself somewhere nice for lunch. Richard's name on her phone screen. She lets it ring twice. 3 times. She answers because she is not ready yet to decide what their relationship is, and not answering feels like a decision she hasn't made. Daisy, he says. That gravity in his voice. The particular careful warmth he uses when he wants to sound like a father. I know the announcement was a surprise. I want to explain in person. There's also a meeting I'd like you to attend. A business introduction. Someone I think you should meet. She almost says no. The word is right there on her tongue. But she is 24 and her professional network is tied up with Richard's company, and she is practical above almost everything. Where? She says. The Grand Solon. Tomorrow at 10. She wears the gray structured suit, the pearl necklace, the nails still fresh, the gold bows precise on the ring finger. She is armored. She tells herself this is reconnaissance, not capitulation. She stands in the elevator of the Grand Solon and breathes and tells herself she is in control of this. The conference room on the 38th floor has views of the whole city. Kim Ha-jin is already standing when she walks in. She does not recognize him from the park. It was dark, she had been barely present, she never properly saw his face. But she notices, the way you notice a shift in pressure, that something happens in his expression the moment she walks through the door. A flicker, controlled immediately, almost completely. But there, as if he already knows something. It unsettles her in a way she cannot name and files away to examine later. He is tall, lean, with the contained physicality of someone who moves with precision. Dark eyes, a charcoal suit that does not require her approval and doesn't try to get it. He looks at her steadily, and she looks back, and the room rearranges itself slightly. Miss Esty, he says. Mr. Kim, she says, and offers her hand. A declaration of terms in a handshake. Richard begins talking. Ha-jin's team presents. The proposition is clean and efficiently delivered. Kim Ha-jin, 27, billionaire hotelier, is expanding aggressively into the American Southeast and requires an American partner. Someone with roots here, with community credibility, with the kind of human presence that money alone cannot purchase. The arrangement would be formalized. There is a contract. There are terms. A marriage contract. Daisy sits with very still hands and a perfectly level face. Richard begins summarizing the key terms on her behalf. She lets him get through 2 sentences. I'd like to address this myself, she says. Richard's jaw tightens. Ha-jin's assistant looks up from his laptop. Ha-jin says nothing, but something at the corner of his mouth moves by a fraction. Please, Ha-jin says. And Daisy, who has been negotiating on other people's behalf for 4 years without a single line of credit, negotiates for herself. She is not aggressive. She is surgical. She states 4 terms clearly. Her finances fully legally separate with documentation. A private account in her name only. Full rights to any professional work produced under her own name during the arrangement. An exit clause at 18 months, exercisable at her discretion alone. Ha-jin agrees to all 4 without pausing. She looks at him then. Really looks. Trying to understand why. He meets her gaze with the steadiness of someone who has been waiting for her to look at him directly. Richard steps out briefly to take a call. The room is quiet. Just the 2 of them for a moment. You agreed very quickly, she says. The terms were reasonable, he says. Most men in your position would have pushed back on at least one. I'm not most men, he says simply, and there is no arrogance in it. Just fact. She holds his gaze for another moment. Then she picks up the contract document and reads every page in the room. Ha-jin pours himself tea and waits. When she reaches the final page, she picks up the pen and signs. This is the last thing she will ever do for this family. She has made her decision with the same quiet precision she has applied to everything that has ever mattered. After today the Parkers are done. She is using this arrangement the way they used her, as a transaction, and then she is building something so entirely her own that no one will ever be able to reach it. She slides the contract across the table. She does not know, in this moment, that the man receiving it already thinks she is extraordinary. Has thought so since a park bench at 11 o'clock at night. Has thought so since he watched her negotiate 4 clauses in a marriage contract she didn't choose with the calm focus of someone who refuses to be made small. The ceremony is small, civil, intentional in its lack of performance. She wears the white lace midi dress with the cherry embroidery scattered across the full skirt like tiny red promises, the tie shoulders, the ivory platform Mary Jane's. She holds flowers she chose herself, white ranunculus, pale and clean. He is in a navy suit, and he looks at her when she walks in with an expression that is carefully composed and only slightly failing at it. The whole thing takes 40 minutes. They drive back to his Buckhead residence in the kind of quiet that is not uncomfortable, just new. She watches Atlanta move past the car window and thinks about nothing in particular, which is a way of thinking about everything. The house is warm and large and beautiful in the way of places that were designed by someone who understood that space should make you exhale. Stone and glass and high ceilings and rooms that feel considered. She has seen photographs, but photographs did not prepare her for the feeling of walking into it. Ha-jin's housekeeper, Mrs. O, bows and disappears discreetly. The house staff have been briefed to give them space. Ha-jin leads her down the main corridor and up the stairs and stops at a door at the end of the hall. He opens it and steps aside. Daisy walks in. She stops. The entire wall behind the bed is upholstered in deep pink velvet, channel-tufted panels floor to ceiling, a headboard that is also a statement, warm and specific and impossible to be neutral about. Above her head, the chandelier is sculptural and white, disc-shaped pendants on gold arms that scatter soft light across every surface. On either side of the bed, globe pendant lights hang at exactly the right height. The wardrobe walls are floor-to-ceiling rose gold mirrored panels that catch the room and give it back doubled, both versions warm. The carpet under her feet is the softest gray she has ever walked on. On the bedside table, there is a small vase of pale pink peonies. Daisy looks at the peonies for a long moment. "The peonies," she says. "Yes," he says from the doorway. "How did you know?" A pause. "I didn't," he says. "I just thought you might like something living in the room." She turns and looks at him. He is leaning against the door frame with his hands in his pockets and his jacket loosened slightly, and he is looking at her with an expression that is careful and genuine and entirely unperformative. "Thank you," she says. "For the room. For all of it." He nods once. "Good night, Daisy." "Good night." He pulls the door closed behind him. She stands in the middle of the room for a while. Then she finds her overnight bag that has been brought up by staff, and she takes out her pajamas, and she changes slowly in the warm light of the disc chandelier, and she turns off the main light, so only the globe pendants on either side of the bed are on. And she climbs into the velvet bed, which is deep and soft and entirely unfamiliar, and she lies there in the warm pink glow of a room someone made beautiful for her before she even arrived. And she thinks about Joan's face at the kitchen door this morning, and she thinks about Marcus grinning all week, and she thinks about a boardroom where her name was not called, and she thinks about Claudine, who will never know how any of this turned out. And she cries. Not loudly, not dramatically. She has never done anything loudly or dramatically in her life. She cries the way she has always done the things that cost her most, quietly, carefully, with her face turned into the pillow so that the sound goes nowhere, so that it belongs only to her. She cries for the years, for the hope she kept alive longer than she should have, for the little girl who learned to be useful because love seemed like something that needed to be earned, and who earned and earned and earned and never quite collected. The peonies are pale in the low light. She cries herself to sleep. The first days are quiet. Ha-jin does not make demands, does not structure her time or suggest she get herself together or treat the house like somewhere she is meant to perform gratitude in. He simply exists in it alongside her, in the way of someone who understands that space is sometimes the kindest thing you can give a person. She wanders. She reads on the terrace. She sleeps later than she has since she was a teenager. She eats when she is hungry rather than when a schedule says to. She wears the white floral puff-sleeve midi dress with the square neckline and the soft, feminine fall of the skirt, a dress she bought 6 months ago and never had time to wear, and she sits on the terrace in the Atlanta morning sun and holds her coffee and does not think about anything in particular. It is disorienting. She does not entirely know what to do with herself when she is not being useful. Ha-jin moves through the house in dark-wash straight-leg jeans and fitted shirts, sometimes in gray sweatpants when he has no calls, barefoot on the warm floors. He is not cold exactly, but he is contained, precise and observant in a way she is starting to understand is just who he is, not absence but attention. He does not hover. He does not perform. Small things start appearing. Coffee at her preferred time, which she never told him. She assumed it was Mrs. O until she came downstairs early one morning and saw him checking the machine himself. Books appearing on the sitting room shelf. Architecture, Caribbean literature, a history of mid-century design, a novel by a Haitian author that makes her stop breathing when she reads the back cover. The terrace cushions replaced with better ones after a rainy week made them damp. A blanket draped over the terrace chair that was not there before. She notices every single one. She says nothing. One morning she comes downstairs in the white floral dress to find him already at the kitchen table. Dark jeans, gray crew neck, coffee, something on his phone. He looks up. "Morning," he says. "Morning." She goes to the machine and makes her coffee and brings it to the table and sits across from him. A pause. The particular careful quiet of two people being gentle with each other. You sleep okay? He asks. Better, she says. And then, because it is true, the room is very comfortable. Good. She wraps both hands around her mug. Outside the garden is green and still. There's a farmer's market on Saturday, he says. If you like that kind of thing. The driver knows the way. She looks at him. You don't have to organize things for me. I'm not organizing, he says. I'm mentioning. He looks back at his phone. There's a difference. She goes to the Saturday market. Ha-jin does not come. The house car is ready at 9 exactly. She walks through stalls of produce and flowers and hand-poured candles and homemade sauces and buys things she does not strictly need and a bunch of orange dahlias from a flower stall run by an elderly woman who wraps them in brown paper and ties them with twine. When she comes home, the vase on the kitchen counter has been quietly cleared, as if to make room. She stands there with the dahlias in her hand and looks at the cleared vase and cannot decide if she is charmed or unsettled or both. She puts the dahlias in the vase. They look exactly right. 3 weeks in, Ha-jin mentions a formal event she will need to attend as part of the arrangement. He tells her his driver knows the relevant boutiques and that she should use the house account. She tells him she has her own clothes. He says he knows, and he is not suggesting otherwise, and the offer stands. She takes him up on it because she is curious more than anything else. She expects the driver. Ha-jin comes himself. He is in dark jeans and a simple black shirt, hands in his pockets, standing at the bottom of the stairs when she comes down. She raises an eyebrow. He says nothing. They get in the car. 3 hours. For boutiques. A Tuesday afternoon in Atlanta that is somehow the most unexpectedly easy time she has had in months. He has opinions. Quiet specific ones. He doesn't perform them, doesn't say this is nice or that doesn't work. He just looks, and when something is right he says it. She comes out of a fitting room in the mocha-draped mini dress with the bell sleeves and the gold hardware pins at the shoulder and hip, and he is leaning against the wall with his arms crossed looking at his phone, and he looks up. That one, he says. She looks down at it, then at him. Just like that. Just like that, he says. It's right. You can see it yourself. She can. She buys it. She also lets him buy her the lavender Saint Laurent crystal bar heels because they are so beautiful that the principle of refusing them loses the argument. He carries the shopping bag himself. She doesn't mention it. They get food at a small Korean restaurant she has never noticed though she has lived in Atlanta her whole life. 4 tables, warm light, a grandmother visible through the kitchen pass. Ha-jin speaks to the young woman at the front in Korean, and they are seated immediately and brought tea without asking. The grandmother comes out a few minutes later, drawn apparently by the commotion of their arrival, and she is small and bright-eyed, and she takes one look at Daisy and says something rapid and warm in Korean while reaching for Daisy's hands. Ha-jin goes very still. What did she say? Daisy asks. He pauses. She said you have a face that has known sadness and is ready to be done with it. Daisy looks at the grandmother. The grandmother beams and squeezes her hands and goes back to her kitchen. Daisy looks at the table. Did she really say that? She asks quietly. Yes, he says. She thinks about that for the rest of the meal and for the car ride home and for a long time after. She starts cooking on a Thursday. It comes on her unexpectedly. She is standing in the kitchen in the cream and brown layered shirt look, wide-leg trousers, bare feet on the warm floor. And she opens the pantry to find something for lunch, and she sees the ingredients that are there, and something shifts. She thinks about Claudine, about the smell of vanilla extract and the sound of oil hitting a hot pan, and the particular feeling of feeding someone as an act of love rather than an act of service. She cooks for 3 hours. Caribbean food, her mother's recipes, the ones she has carried in her body since before she could read them. Stewed chicken with scotch bonnet and thyme. Rice and peas with coconut milk. Fried plantain, the kind that is caramelized and soft and utterly correct. She packs it all up properly in containers from Mrs. O's very organized kitchen into a warm bag, and she stands back and looks at it. Then she picks it up and gets in the car and takes it to the Kim Hotel Group headquarters building in Midtown. The lobby is exactly what she expected from a building that belongs to him. Clean lines, warm materials, everything exactly right. The receptionist at the front desk is a polished young woman who looks up with professional efficiency. Hi, Daisy says. I'm here for Kim Ha-jin. I'm his wife. The words come out of her mouth, and she registers them a half second after. His wife. The receptionist's professionalism flickers with something. Not quite surprise, just a recalibration. Of course, Mrs. Kim. Let me ring up to his office. A pause, a brief exchange in low tones, and then his assistant will come down to bring you up. The assistant, a young man named Dae-young who clearly knows exactly who she is and is managing his reaction to her arrival with impressive composure, escorts her to the elevator and up to the executive floor, which is all glass walls and clean surfaces and the specific quiet of a floor where serious decisions are made. He leads her to a set of double doors and knocks twice and opens them. Ha-jin is behind a large desk in his full suit, jacket on, in the middle of reviewing what looks like contract documents. Two members of his team are seated across from him. Everyone looks up. Ha-jin looks up. He sees her. He sees the warm bag in her hands. Something happens in his face that his team, who have worked with him for years and have never seen him be anything other than entirely controlled, will be talking about for the rest of the week. Mrs. Kim, Dae-young announces, somewhat unnecessarily. Hi, Daisy says, and she is aware, acutely, of every person in the room, and she lifts the bag slightly. I cooked. I don't know. I just thought you might want something proper. She pauses. I can leave it if you're busy. I don't need to. Stay, Ha-jin says. His voice is completely even. His face has rearranged itself back into composure. But his team is already gathering their documents with the efficiency of people who have received a very clear nonverbal instruction. The office empties in under a minute. Ha-jin stands up and comes around his desk. He takes the warm bag from her and sets it on the low table by the window, and he opens it and looks at the containers inside, and then he looks at her. You cooked this morning, he says. This morning, yes. And then brought it here. Yes. He is quiet for a moment. Why? She considers the question. Because you've been doing things, she says. Small things. And I wanted to do something back. And I didn't know what else to do, so I cooked. He looks at her steadily. The books, he says. The coffee. The cleared vase, she says. A pause. Something between them settles. Sit down, he says. Please. They eat together at the low table by his office window with the Atlanta skyline laid out below them, and his whole empire quiet on the other side of the glass doors. And for the first time since the night of the announcement, Daisy feels something that is not grief or anger or the exhaustion of holding herself together. She feels easy, genuinely, unexpectedly easy, like a breath that has been held for a very long time finally releasing. Ha-jin eats without ceremony and without performance and says, after the first container, my mother makes rice and peas when she visits Seoul's Caribbean food market. Hers is not like this. What's wrong with hers? Nothing is wrong with it, he says carefully. Yours is better. Daisy almost laughs. She contains it, but only barely. 3 days later, he calls her in the morning. I want to show you the building properly, he says. If you want to see it. She wears the black ruched cap-sleeve crop top with the ivory bow skirt. The white matte fabric gathered into soft black velvet bows all the way down the left side, floor length, moving beautifully when she walks. Black block-heeled sandals. The black and cream Balenciaga shoulder bag. Silver hoop earrings, and the pearl charm bracelet on her left wrist. The mocha nails precise and perfect. She looks, walking into his building this time without a warm food bag, like someone who belongs in a room of this caliber. She knows it. She carries it without announcing it. Ha-jin is waiting in the lobby in his suit, and he looks at her for a beat when she walks in with the same fractional expression she is beginning to learn means something significant. He shows her everything. The event spaces, the hospitality floors, the design decisions that went into each room, the restaurant concept on the 40th floor. He introduces her to his key people with a directness that says this person matters, pay attention, and his team receives that instruction and treats her accordingly. And Daisy moves through his spaces the way she moves through all spaces, with the specific quiet intelligence of someone who understands buildings at a cellular level. She notices things. The guest flow pattern on the lobby floor that creates a bottleneck near the east lifts. The lighting temperature in the main restaurant that is slightly too cool for the warmth of the material palette. A flooring choice on the mezzanine level that tells a story that contradicts the hotel's price point. She doesn't say any of it out loud. She is not here to consult. She is just looking. But Ha-jin, walking slightly behind her, watches her look. He watches her eyes move across a room, and find the thing in 3 seconds that his design team missed in 3 months. He watches her pause at the mezzanine floor and look down at the tiles, and then look up at the ceiling and then across at the wall finish, assembling something in her mind that he would give a considerable amount to hear. His senior designer, Park Ji-young, falls into step beside Ha-jin. She's looking at the mezzanine flow. Park says quietly, "I know," Ha-jin says. "She found the east lobby bottleneck in 4 minutes." "I know," Ha-jin says again. Park is quiet for a moment. Then, "She's extraordinary, sir." Ha-jin watches Daisy standing at the window of the 40th floor restaurant looking out at Atlanta with the particular expression of someone who is having a private conversation with the building. "I know," he says. Ha-jin's parents arrive from Seoul at the end of the month. Kim Hyun-ja is a small woman with an elegant posture and eyes that miss absolutely nothing. And she has Ha-jin's quality of making you feel like the most interesting thing in the room without performing the effort of it. She holds Daisy's hands when they are introduced, both hands, completely, the way people do when they actually mean it, and says in careful English, "You are more beautiful than his description." Daisy glances at Ha-jin. He is looking at something on the other side of the room with great focus. Kim Suk-jun is tall and warm and laughs from somewhere deep, the kind of father whose pride in his son is so natural and ambient that it's like weather. You don't notice it until you step outside it. He shakes Daisy's hand and then overrides it and hugs her instead and says, in Korean that Ha-jin translates in real time, that he has been very curious about the woman who agreed to marry his son without being afraid of him. "Should I have been afraid of him?" Daisy asks. Suk-jun laughs. "Most people are. I was too tired to be afraid of anyone," she says. Suk-jun laughs harder. Ha-jin looks at the ceiling. Dinner is warm and loud and full. Hyun-ja asking questions with genuine curiosity and following every answer with more questions. Suk-jun telling a story about Ha-jin at 17 that makes Ha-jin set down his chopsticks and look pained. The table covered in food and low light, and the particular noise of a family that has never rationed its warmth. Daisy sits in the middle of it and smiles and is present and charming and entirely, quietly falling apart inside. Because this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like when a family loves each other without it costing anything. Without anyone keeping score. Without anyone performing gratitude for simply being allowed to be there. Hyun-ja reaches over and touches Ha-jin's arm mid-sentence. Just because. Suk-jun tops up his son's glass without being asked. Ha-jin rolls his eyes at his father, and there is 27 years of love in the eye roll. Safe and certain and entirely without condition. Daisy smiles through all of it. She makes it through dinner and through the after-dinner tea and through the good nights and up the stairs and into her room. She closes the door. She does not cry this time. She just sits on the edge of her pink velvet bed and is very still, and the anger moves through her like a slow tide. Not at Hyun-ja, not at Suk-jun, not at Ha-jin. At the years. At the family she tried so hard to belong to. At the little girl who turned herself inside out trying to earn something that was apparently just given to some people for free. She doesn't go down to breakfast the next morning. Or the one after that. She tells herself she needs space. She moves through the house carefully, efficiently, choosing her moments. Eats when he is in calls. Reads on the terrace when he is in meetings. She is fine. She is perfectly fine. On the second evening there is a knock at her door. She considers not answering. Then she opens it. Ha-jin is in gray sweatpants and a white shirt, bare feet on the hall carpet, and his face has none of its public composure. He just looks at her with the directness of someone who has stopped managing the situation. "Talk to me," he says. "I'm fine," she says. "You're not." He leans against the doorframe. "You've been disappearing for 2 days. My mother thinks she did something wrong. She didn't do anything wrong." "Then what happened?" "Nothing happened, Ha-jin. I just needed." "Daisy." His voice is quiet. Not demanding. Just unwilling to accept the performance of fine. "I'm not going anywhere. I can stand here all night if that's what it takes." She looks at him. The hall light falls warm across his face, and he is looking at her with a patience that has no performance in it. The same patience as a park bench in the dark. And that thought, that recognition, surfacing at last, cracks something loose in her. She opens the door wider. He comes in. She sits on the edge of the bed. He sits in the chair by the window, not crowding her, giving her space but not distance. And she looks at her hands and starts talking. "Your family," she says. "At dinner." Your mother touched your arm. Just like that. For no reason, just because. And your father filled your glass without you asking. And you rolled your eyes at him, and he laughed, and it was just so ordinary. Her voice is even, but her hands are pressed together in her lap. It was so ordinary for all of you. And I sat there watching it, and I couldn't. She stops. You couldn't what? He says softly. I couldn't understand why it was never ordinary for me. The anger is in her voice now, underneath the evenness, real and old and tired. I did everything right. I was grateful. I was quiet. I worked harder than anyone, and I took up exactly as much space as they gave me, and I waited. I kept waiting for it to just become ordinary. For them to just love me the way your parents love you, without me having to do anything to deserve it every single day. Her voice breaks, finally, on the last word. Why couldn't I be loved like that? What was wrong with me? Why was I never enough for them to just? She can't finish. Ha-jin is across the room in 3 steps. He pulls her into his chest and wraps both arms around her and holds her, one hand on the back of her head. And when she tries to pull back, instinct, reflex, the muscle memory of a person who has always processed grief alone, he does not let her go. I've got you, he says quietly. I'm not going anywhere. She stops pulling. And then she cries, properly, completely, the way she has not cried in years, maybe since she was 5 years old, and someone sat her down and told her about her mother in the gentle, devastating language adults use with small children. She cries for all of it. For Claudine and for the Parkers and for the years she gave away and the love she never collected and the little girl who learned to make herself useful because that seemed like the only currency that worked. Ha-jin holds her through all of it. His hand moves slowly up and down her back. He does not tell her to stop. He does not tell her it is okay. He just stays, solid and warm and entirely present. And when she finally stills, he speaks against her hair. There is nothing wrong with you, he says. There was never anything wrong with you. What they gave you was not love. It was management. And you deserved so much more than that. A pause. You still do. She breathes. In and out. Her face is against his chest, and she can feel his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek, and she focuses on that until the world stops shaking. I'm sorry, she says finally. Don't, he says. Don't apologize for this. Not to me. She pulls back slowly, and he lets her, and she looks up at him with her eyes swollen and her face entirely open in a way it has never been in front of another person, and he looks at her with an expression she has never seen on anyone's face before. Not pity. Something else entirely. Something that looks, she thinks, like recognition. Like she said something he has been waiting a long time to hear someone else say out loud. He doesn't say anything. He just looks at her, and she looks at him, and the room is warm and very quiet. 3 days later, Hyunja calls Daisy's phone. Good morning, she says, in the pleasant tone of a woman who has already made a decision. I am taking you out today. 10 o'clock. Ha-jin's car will bring you. Mrs. Kim, you really don't have to. I know I don't have to, Hyunja says serenely. 10 o'clock. The spa is a quiet Korean jjimjilbang in a building that smells like warm cedar and green tea, and it is exactly the kind of place where the world slows down whether you want it to or not. 2 women take Daisy's hands and look at her nails, plain, the mocha gel grown out, the gold bows she hasn't refreshed, and say nothing but set to work with the focused attention of professionals who take their craft seriously. Daisy sits in the warm light and breathes and lets someone take care of her hands. She comes out with the sheer mocha gel set fresh and precise, the gold bows on the ring finger exactly right, small gold stars on the others. She holds her hands up in the changing room, and Hyunja looks at them with visible satisfaction. Better, Hyunja says. Much better. Lunch is at a Korean fusion restaurant in Buckhead where Hyunja orders enthusiastically and translates every dish with the delight of someone sharing something they love. She talks about food and soul and Ha-jin's father's terrible taste in restaurants before she trained him. She talks about the early years of the hotel business, when Ha-jin was 23 and already making decisions that made seasoned investors nervous and turned out to be exactly right. He was always like that, Hyunja says. Certain. Even as a small boy, he would decide a thing, and that was the end of it. She rolls her glass between her palms. He feels things very deeply, but inside only. His father is loud. You've seen. He feels everything out loud. It comes out of him immediately. Ha-jin keeps it. She taps her own chest. In here. Daisy is quiet. I am observant, Hyunja continues. 27 years of watching my son. I know how he looks when something does not matter to him. She sets her glass down and looks at Daisy directly. He has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you. Not once. In his whole life. Daisy looks at the table. I'm not telling you what to feel, Hyunja says gently. I'm telling you so that you are not confused about what is already happening. He is not a man who performs things. When he acts, it is because something is real. Daisy thinks about a vase cleared for orange dahlias. Books on a shelf. Peonies in a room she hadn't arrived in yet. A park bench in the dark where someone sat down and asked nothing. She thinks about all of it, quietly, the whole car ride home. That evening Ha-jin is on the terrace when she gets back. Dark jeans, navy shirt, sleeves pushed up, reading something on his tablet. The Atlanta evening is warm and golden and the garden below is very green. She comes out in the sage green floral cord, the draped silk skirt, the fitted square neck corset top with the rose print, the white strappy gold heel sandals, and sits in the other chair, and they are quiet for a little while in the comfortable way they have slowly built. He puts down the tablet. How was today, he says. Your mother is remarkable, Daisy says. I know. A pause. She likes you. She told me things about you. He looks at her. What things? Things. Daisy looks at her new nails, the gold bows catching the terrace light. Ha-jin. The books on the shelf. The coffee. The dahlias vase. Yes, he says. You've been doing those things since I arrived. Yes. She looks at him. He looks back at her. The evening light is warm between them, and the city hums somewhere below, and neither of them is pretending anymore. She stands up. She crosses to where he is sitting. She takes his face in both hands, and she kisses him. He is still for one breath, one single, suspended breath, and then his hands come up to her waist, and he kisses her back. And it is nothing like a transaction, and nothing like an arrangement, and nothing like anything either of them planned for. She can feel the care in him, the deliberateness, and underneath it something that is not careful at all, something that has been waiting for exactly this, and she holds his face in her hands and gives him the permission he has been too patient to take. When they finally pull apart, she is breathing differently. The terrace is warm and golden and absolutely still. He rests his forehead against hers. Eyes closed. Daisy, he says. Just her name. In a voice she has never heard from him before. Neither of them moves for a long time. Simone Parker finds the Buckhead address through Richard. She comes on a Tuesday morning, uncomfortable and hopeful in a pale blue blouse, carrying a coffee she hasn't touched. Daisy answers the door herself. She is in the abstract print off-shoulder long-sleeve maxi, the one with the white base and the sweeping black and gold brushstroke pattern, fitted, striking, with clear heels, and she looks at Simone standing on the doorstep looking young and uncertain and genuinely glad to see her. Can I come in? Simone says. Daisy steps back. They sit in the drawing room. Simone looks around at the house with the visible effort of someone trying to be casual. This is beautiful, she says. Thank you. How are you? We've been worried. I've been worried. I'm well, Daisy says. Simone sets her coffee down. Daisy, I know the announcement was a shock. I want you to know I didn't know it was coming. I didn't ask for it. And I've been trying to. The role is a lot. The team keeps referencing projects and strategies that I don't fully understand, and the Hong Kong partners have been. She shakes her head. I feel so out of my depth. I was hoping maybe you could help me get oriented, just to understand the foundations. Because you know this material better than anyone, and I thought. Simone, Daisy says. Simone stops. Do you know what the Hong Kong partnership is? Daisy says. Her voice is even. Not cruel. Just clear. Not fully, no? That's why I built it. 14 months. Cold contact to signed agreement. I had every meeting, built every relationship, created the proposal framework from nothing. I also built the Southeast Regional Expansion Strategy, the sustainability criteria that won the Lakewood contract, the coastal development plan that your father has been presenting as company vision for the past 2 years. Daisy's hands are folded in her lap. She does not raise her voice. I built all of it while working my actual job and asking for nothing beyond the VP title I was promised. Twice. In front of witnesses. Simone is very still. I'm not angry at you, Daisy says. I mean that. You didn't do any of this. You didn't ask for any of it. She pauses. But I need you to understand what you're asking when you come here. You're asking me to help you do a job built entirely on my years, In a company that used me and replaced me, and I won't do that. Not one more hour of my life goes to that place. Simone's eyes are bright. Daisy, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how much. I know you didn't know, Daisy says. That's also something you should think about. Why you didn't know. She stands. I forgive you, Simone. I genuinely do. But I need you to understand that forgiving you doesn't mean we go back to something. There's nothing to go back to. What we had wasn't. It was me making myself available to a family that never fully claimed me. I'm not available anymore. Simone stands. A tear moves down her cheek. I really am sorry. I know, Daisy says. I believe you. She walks to the drawing room door and holds it. Take care of yourself. Simone goes. Daisy stands in the hallway. From down the corridor, she hears Ha-jin's footsteps. He was in his home office, she knows, close enough to hear the low register of the conversation even if not the words. He appears around the corner and crosses to her and hands her a glass of water without saying anything. She takes it, drinks, exhales. Okay, he says quietly. Yes, she says. And then, actually yes. She stops. I feel like I put something down that I've been carrying for a very long time. He looks at her. Good, he says simply. Richard calls Ha-jin directly 3 days later. Daisy is in the sitting room reading when she hears Ha-jin's voice shift in the next room. Not louder, just different, the particular measured tone of someone applying control. She sets her book down. She goes to the doorway. Ha-jin is at his desk. Phone to his ear. His face is composed and entirely still. I understand what you're suggesting, he says. I want to be clear about what will happen if you move forward with that. A pause. He listens. His jaw moves slightly. Then I suggest you reconsider. Because what you're describing is a public statement that involves my wife. And I will respond to it publicly. With documentation. He pauses again. That is not a negotiation, Mr. Parker. It's a courtesy warning. He ends the call. He looks up and sees Daisy in the doorway. Richard, she says. Yes. What did he want? Business access through our connection. A pause. He suggested that if I didn't facilitate an introduction, he would make the original terms of our arrangement public. Daisy is very still. What did you tell him? What I just said. She looks at him. He is completely calm and completely unintimidated, and looking at her with the directness she has come to understand means he is about to do something. That same evening, Ha-jin takes a press profile call he has been delaying. She doesn't know he has moved it up. She finds out when Dae-young sends her a link at 8:30 that night with no message attached. She reads the profile sitting on her bed in the pink velvet room. He talks about the American expansion. He talks about the Southeast market and the vision behind the properties and what he is building here. And then the journalist asks who he credits for the strategic intelligence behind the American positioning, and Ha-jin says, without hesitation, without qualification, Daisy St. Kim. Her creative and strategic vision has been foundational to how we have approached this market. She understands hospitality in a way that is genuinely rare. I am lucky to have her as my partner in this. Her name, on record, said by him, in a published piece, permanently. She sits with the phone in her lap for a long time. Richard calls. She doesn't pick up. Patricia calls, 2 days later. She doesn't pick up. Joan calls on a Sunday morning, and Daisy picks up on the first ring. The business is struggling, Joan says, cutting to it the way she always does. The Hong Kong deal started fraying almost immediately after you left. The Lakewood dispute opened last month. Some regional partners are pulling back. Richard has been in emergency meetings all week. Daisy is quiet. I'm not telling you to do anything, Joan says. I just thought you should know, in case they come to you. They won't get through, Daisy says. I know, my love. A pause, warm and steady. You sound different. You sound rested. Daisy looks out the bedroom window at the garden where Ha-jin is visible below, in his gray sweatpants and white crew neck, reading, 1 foot extended, entirely himself, the Saturday morning sun on his face. I am rested, she says. Joan, I really am. She finds the photograph 3 weeks later. It is in the top drawer of the bedside table, which she opens looking for a hair tie. A printed photograph, slightly larger than a standard size, tucked beneath a notebook. She takes it out and looks at it, and takes a moment to understand what she is seeing. The park, the lake, the bench, both of them. The security camera must have been on the opposite bank. It captures the bench at a slight distance, clear enough to see her posture, her profile, The way she is sitting with her head slightly tilted, speaking to the water. And at the far end of the bench, him. Sitting with the deliberate stillness of someone who has chosen to be there. He has been keeping this photograph. She sits on the edge of the pink velvet bed and holds it in both hands and sits with it for a very long time. She thinks about the meeting room and the flicker in his eyes when she walked in. She thinks about the terms he agreed to without pausing. She thinks about the peonies in this room before she arrived. The books. The coffee. The cleared vase. She thinks about a 27-year-old man who runs a hotel empire across 7 countries and does not stop for strangers, who sat down on a park bench in the dark next to a woman who was falling apart and asked nothing, who found out her name the next morning and waited, who let her come to it herself. Her eyes fill, not from sadness, from the specific, overwhelming feeling of being known. She gets up. She is in soft home clothes, loose trousers, a simple top, bare feet, and she carries the photograph down the hall and down the stairs and to the library where she knows he is. The house is quiet. Just the 2 of them tonight, Mrs. O having left at 6. She opens the library door. He is on the sofa in his gray sweatpants and a white shirt, one leg stretched out, reading. He looks up. She holds up the photograph. He looks at it, then at her. He closes his book. "You kept it," she says. "Yes. You knew. When I walked into that meeting room, you knew exactly who I was." "Yes. And you said nothing." Her voice is not accusing. It is something else, something that is trying to understand. "You let me sit there and negotiate a contract with you, and you never said anything. You weren't ready to be seen," he says quietly. "Not like that. Not from that night. You needed to come to this yourself." She looks at him. Her eyes are full, and her face is open and completely unguarded in a way it has taken months to arrive at. She crosses the room. She sits down next to him on the library sofa, and she takes his hand and holds it in both of hers and looks at him. "I'm not leaving," she says. "At 18 months. I'm not using the exit clause." He turns his hand over and holds hers back. He doesn't speak. "I love you," she says. "I'm saying it first because you sat on that bench and you didn't ask me for anything. And you put peonies in a room before I arrived. And you cleared a vase for my dahlias. And you held me in that hallway and didn't let me go. And your mother held my hands at lunch and told me something that made me understand what has been happening in this house." She takes a breath. Her voice is unsteady and she doesn't try to steady it. "I want to stay. I'm choosing to stay. Not because of the contract. Because of you. Because of who you are when nobody is watching." She looks at him. He is looking at her with that expression she has been learning the name for since the night in the hallway. The one that is beyond composure, beyond control. The one that is just entirely, openly him. "Ha-jin," she says, and she is crying now, warmly, openly, without shame. "Will you marry me? Actually marry me? Me asking you. Not the contract." He reaches into the pocket of his sweatpants. He produces a ring. Pear-shaped. Rose gold setting. Paved diamonds surrounding the stone, catching the lamplight, and scattering it across the library walls in tiny fragments. It is the most beautiful thing she has ever seen. He has had it for a while. The size is exact. She stares at it. "Ha-jin," she says. "I was waiting," he says, "for you to be ready." She laughs. It comes out of the same place as the tears, warm and real and entirely surprised, and she holds out her left hand, and he slides the ring onto her finger, and then she leans forward and kisses him, soft at first, and then not soft, and his arms come around her, and the library is warm, and the lamplight is golden, and the photograph is on the cushion beside them with the park and the lake and the bench and the beginning of everything. Joan flies in on Friday. Daisy opens the front door, and Joan is standing there with her carry-on bag, and she takes one look at Daisy's face, rested and open, and wearing the blush pink bow midi dress with the Chanel sandals, the ring on her left hand catching the morning light, and she makes a sound that is somewhere between a gasp and a sob and pulls Daisy into her arms and holds her the way she has held her at every important moment since she was 7 years old. "Show me," Joan says, pulling back, reaching for her hand. Daisy holds out the ring. Joan covers her mouth. Her shoulders shake. "Oh, my girl," she says. "Oh, my girl." Ha-jin appears in the hallway behind Daisy. Joan looks at him over Daisy's shoulder with eyes that are streaming and a face that is saying everything without a single word. He holds her gaze for a moment and then nods once, quietly, the nod of a man making a promise. Joan seems satisfied with that. Ha-jin calls his parents that evening. He puts it on speaker at the kitchen table with Daisy beside him and Joan across from them, both with a glass of wine and the specific energy of someone settling in for a very good moment. His mother picks up on the second ring. Ha-jin says 3 words in Korean. Hyunja screams. An actual, full-bodied, undignified scream that makes Ha-jin hold the phone away from his ear and makes Daisy's face break into the widest smile she has smiled in years. There is rapid Korean from the background. Suk-jun asking what happened, Hyunja telling him. A pause, and then Suk-jun's voice coming on, clear and deliberate. Daisy, he says in English, specifically for her. Welcome, my daughter. Daisy presses her lips together. The ring is warm on her finger. Joan is already crying again across the table. Thank you, Daisy says. Thank you, Abioji. The word comes out of her without planning. The Korean word for father, something she has never called anyone in her life. And there is a silence on the line that is full to the edges. And then Suk-jun says something in Korean that makes Ha-jin's jaw tighten in the way it does when he is managing an emotion he is not ready to name. He says, Ha-jin translates quietly, that he has been waiting for someone worthy of his son, and that you were worth waiting for. The dinner that night happens in the kitchen. Joan's rules. She arrives at the stove with the authority of someone who has cooked in houses far grander than this one and will not be relocated. Hyunja, who booked a flight the moment she hung up the phone, sits at the kitchen counter watching every single thing Joan does with the focused intensity of a student. Joan, prepared to be polite and now genuinely charmed, explains each step. The Scotch bonnet preparation, the time ratio, the chicken seasoned overnight, a point she makes with some firmness. Hyunja contributes a Korean braised short rib that transforms one burner into something that smells extraordinary. 2 women who have never met finding the language of people who feed others as an act of love. Suk-jun tells stories at the table. Ha-jin shakes his head at most of them. Daisy laughs at all of them. Ha-jin's hand finds hers underneath the table, fingers lacing through hers. He doesn't look at her when he does it. He is listening to his father, entirely present. His hand just finds hers and holds on the way something does when it has decided. She thinks about Claudine, about the park bench, about every 2 a.m. in a company that was never going to claim her, about a man who sat down in the dark and asked for nothing. She is here now. She chose this. It is hers. Joan comes out of the kitchen with the fried plantain, sets it on the table, looks at Daisy sitting there with Ha-jin's hand in hers, and the ring catching the warm light, and the most rested face Joan has seen on her in 17 years. She says, quietly, just for Daisy, "There you are." Daisy looks at her. "Here I am," she says. The table is warm and loud and full, and Suk-jun is laughing, and Hyunja is already asking Joan for the recipe, and Ha-jin's thumb moves once across Daisy's knuckles, just that, and she holds his hand and feels, for the first time in a very long time, like she has landed somewhere that is entirely, unconditionally, irrevocably hers. And if you felt every single piece of this story in your chest, the park bench, the peonies, the cleared vase, Joan saying "there you are," then besties, you know what to do. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the right person will sit down beside you in the dark and not ask for a single thing. And subscribe to Afro-Seoul Stories, Soulmates, because we have so many more stories where this one came from. And we will see you next time.